And then, of course, we get down to 2020, early 2020, and COVID hits. And when COVID hit, that was massive for tourism, cultural heritage management, because these places that absolutely rely on tourists and visitors coming through, that just dried up overnight. My career has been very, very random. My undergraduate degree was actually in ancient history and anthropology up in Auckland. So I spent 4 years studying ancient Egypt. It couldn't be more different, but also I've been surprised how often I've actually used that in my current work. So I studied a concept that is in German, Weltanschauung, which is a very essentially boils down to worldview, but you can't really boil it down. It's a bit more complex than that. And it was really about how the ancient Egyptians saw the world, saw themselves in it, and against their context, how they saw other people. And amazingly, that has led me right back into well-being and occupational health and safety. So at the moment, I work in occupational health and safety for a central government department over in Ireland. And prior to that, I was in local government in New Zealand. So very public sector heavy. I've probably worked in occ health and safety for about 5 or 6 years now. Left university and did a bit of traveling. And that's how I landed in Ireland back in the day. And I started working in a stately house and gardens for a company called the National Trust. So they operate a lot of stately houses and castles and pieces of countryside around the UK. And I worked on their visitor operations side. So it did kind of connect back to being an anthropology undergrad, thinking about cultural heritage and how people engage with it. And eventually moved around a few locations and a few museums. There was a little break somewhere along the line where I went to the Philippines and took a bit of a year to work for actually Immigration New Zealand, which is a bit random, but an amazing opportunity to work with their site there. So different types of operations and different types of applying legislation. And then, of course, we get down to 2020, early 2020, and COVID hits. And when COVID hit, that was massive for tourism, cultural heritage management, because these places that absolutely rely on tourists and visitors coming through, that just dried up overnight. So we're all working from home, trying to keep people employed, putting people on furlough, just a really tough time to be an employee in the charitable sector. And through that, I was exposed to control measures for this new risk, which was contracting COVID-19 at work. So part of my role became procuring PPE, finding out what PPE was, doing risk assessments, coming up with visitor routes, applying legislation. And I found actually that was really interesting. Deploying staff back to sites, training them, just fascinating stuff. So when my husband's work dried up, we decided we'd just take a little break, head back to my homeland, Aotearoa, New Zealand. And instead of spending 2 years doing the van life as we'd planned, I actually got a job down in Central Otago at their district council. So luckily for me, their people and culture general manager gave me the opportunity of a lifetime to become their health and safety lead, which was amazing because I didn't come necessarily from that background. It was all just learned experience and then a bit of learning on the job and study as well. So I really appreciated them taking the chance to show that I could do the job that I said that I could. And eventually when we moved back to Ireland, so my daughter could study in the Gael school. So that's an Irish language school. I know there's a big commitment in New Zealand to really embrace Te Ao Māori and learn Māori language. And we had that same kind of commitment over in Ireland as well. We knew we wanted to be part of the renewal of Irish language. So back we came. immersed into first language Irish primary school, which is really exciting and interesting when you get a call from the teacher to say that something's happened in school and you're just trying to work out exactly what it is that happened at school. Yeah, and was able to bring the health, safety, and well-being practice back with me to Irish Central Government. So that's kind of my career path, which sort of went around and about. But
do you, just going back to the Irish language, are you able to speak much of it? Has it been a learning journey, I imagine?
It's definitely a learning journey, aside from the Duolingo, trying to pick up more and more. But what's been amazing by having a wee babby start in junior infants, new entrants at school, is that you get the opportunity to learn phonics and things like that along with them. There's actually other half Kiwi, half Irish kids in the school as well. So it's been a very interesting experience.
That's really cool. And what a cool thing to try and get your head around. Like, as you said, like also doing life. Like,
yeah, definitely also doing life, full-time job. I'm studying myself as well. So between that and parenting, there's a lot going on. So I'm doing my master's in systems thinking and practice. So STIP, as it's called, which I completely misunderstood. I thought it was either something to do with computer engineering or something that sat alongside project management. But it's actually a really interesting concept about how we bring our individual worldviews, appreciate the worldviews in the context in which we are. So both at an individual, organizational, environmental perspective. So I'm in my first module of that now, and it's been very, very interesting. It's actually changed my perception on how I see a lot of my job, which involves, I guess, social learning about going out into our organization, finding the experiences of various employees, particularly those of middle managers, and putting together opportunities for us to connect and then learn and reflect on how we're learning and how that applies to our health and safety systems. So I think the word systems is thrown around for a lot of different things. We're talking about ecological systems, or even a health and safety system, maybe something that's got an international standard. But really taking on this module helped me appreciate the interconnectedness of all the different elements. How do you draw those boundaries of what's inside and what's outside? And could somebody else look at the same picture and draw their boundary in a totally different place, which seems on the surface very logical. Of course they would, but how do you react to that? And use that to sort of help change happen in your organization in a way that is going to suit everybody and that's going to be embedded for the long term. Yeah, lots of challenges, but loads to explore there.
Why do you do what you do in wellbeing? Like, what's been a real motivator for you? And it sounds like it might have been COVID, but were there other things?
Yeah, well, definitely. That sort of was a big catalyst in jumping through. And I suppose because I am an occupational health and safety professional, but in my mind, I guess the way I think, I can't separate well-being out of that, because if you have high well-being, you're going to be experiencing better health. You're going to be ideally safer at work, or more open to having those conversations about what it means to have a really safe workplace. And the big catalyst for me was essentially wanting to help my colleagues, so it's, I guess, from a position of just care and just general interest in other people and how they're experiencing work and wanting to make that place better for them. I was particularly attracted to sort of that middle structure of management, either managers who are brand new. I always think about my early experiences in the working world, and I was a supervisor at a Paper Plus franchise, and no one taught me how to manage people. And I think back on my work career, and I can certainly think of some cringe, awkward conversations. So new managers and middle managers who are kind of getting directions from the top and feedback from the bottom, and they're getting this crushed in between. And the importance of well-being in that space and making it something that's really positive learning journey, building skills, building a culture of work. We spend so much time at work. We need to want to be here and enjoy the relationships that we make. When we're in the workplace, I think we can get really strong value out of that. And I think I read a study, I don't know, it might have come through one of the Roe emails, to be perfectly honest, about the impact that happy working parents have on their children, and ultimately that flow on into our wider community. Since we spend so much time at work, if it's not a place where we feel like we're thriving, that can have a huge impact on our families, and then ultimately their ability to go on and thrive at school. So I really see it as part of this much wider social picture. And you just get to impact that sort of small area of your influence. So that's something that I took really seriously, and it really drove me towards wanting those health, safety, and well-being roles. So lucky me.
It's great. I think it's awesome. And I can see how with that thinking, that's, that system stuff really makes sense to you, because it's not just this bit, it's these bits as well. What are you focusing on at work right now? And what's been a recent win?
So I can't talk too deeply about some of the projects that I'm working on at work, because I work for the Department of Justice. So there's some work we can't talk about. But generally, the biggest win we've had recently is being able to have some really great conversations at our most senior levels. So one of the things that attracted me to this role was getting to be part of a health and safety team. So when I was working in New Zealand, I was like a lone ranger, leading this safety function on my own. But here I'm part of a team. I've got a head of health and safety above me and great colleagues, including a wellbeing lead. And we have these fabulous conversations about what work could be like and what things we'd like to do, and being able to take those up to our senior team and see them really get excited. And you can see the well-being capacities growing across the organization as we really get stuck into some of these things that we've been wanting to do. Our department works both with criminal and civil legislation, but we also work with areas like immigration, which is a really interesting area, particularly in Europe. There's a lot of migration. It's a lot easier for people to move around. So being able to work with those systems and actually get some backbone behind them has been pretty exciting.
I imagine it's quite a challenging environment in that you have got those legislation and you're a government body and you've got all those things, but it also sounds like if you've got a senior leadership team who's engaged, like, wow, how great that must be.
Oh, do you know what? We need everybody on board, obviously, of course. We all need to get into the water together. Ideally, we all need to paddle at the same time. But having senior leadership prepared to provide the resources, whether that means financial resources or human resources, to get health, safety, well-being programs and initiatives off the ground, and that being a big priority makes a real difference, because we've done a little bit of internal research, and I've done this research in other roles as well. And a lot of well-being is low-hanging fruit, I think, in most organizations. And employees just want to know that their senior managers recognize the work that they do, and particularly in an area like justice, that some of that work's really tough, really hard work to do. And we can't stop doing it as well, because we've got a statutory duty. We have to, by law, deliver the work, sometimes in really short space of time. So when we've got senior leadership who are prepared to hear before their cohorts of staff and talk about how well-being matters, we're already starting to open the door to getting some really good projects underway.
And tell me, how does Row help your work?
Oh, Row is, particularly when I was living in Central Otago, which is not the part of New Zealand that I originally hail from. My family is from Auckland. And being in a lone standing role, it can be very isolating experience when you're just trying to figure it out. So Row developing has been a really important, I guess, social network and professional network. I really appreciated being able to call in and maybe talk about some of the things that are either challenging or some of the projects that we're looking for, and make connections with other wellbeing professionals. So that was the first sort of big tick, big thumbs up for me. But what I really also enjoy, especially now that I'm overseas, is actually getting the newsletters. They're kind of like a little friendly hello, but I find that they're really well researched as well. So you're doing a fab job, Sarah. It's always really exciting to see what are some of the articles, what are some of the studies that are coming through. And to be honest, that saves me a whole bunch of time, because here are some of the key topics. So there's just some fabulous resources on there that you can draw from, and it all just adds to your program.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. It's funny. I was telling someone the other day that there's a huge amount that ends up on the cutting room floor when it comes to research, because I'm like, that's interesting. No, it's rubbish. That's interesting. No, I can't share that.
No, there must just be so much. So at least we know that when that's coming through, that it's gone through, a really a critical process, thinking, is this going to be useful for wellbeing professionals? Yes, it is.
Yes. And tell me, what are your top 3 to 5 self-care go-to activities at work and at home?
Definitely. I find it so hard to stop when I'm on a roll. I get into hyper-focus mode, and I could be sitting at my desk from dawn until dusk. Thank goodness I have a family, because I don't think I'd come up for air sometimes. But we've got this fab team, and we do check in on each other and do things like going for coffee. So when I'm at work, making sure that I get those coffee breaks, tea breaks, and a nice walk around the park. That can be a really great reset if you're dealing with something complicated. And then when we get home, so I'm making a big move at the moment. So I'm leaving County Dublin and I'm heading south. I love a little walk near water, some kind of body of water. So we are now going to be very close to the ocean. So I recommend a walk in nature, whatever kind of nature stimulates you, because that kind of comes back to the systems thinking, is we are people in our environment. We're not outsiders looking in. We're deeply connected to it. So whether you're a forest person, maybe a hill walker or a beach walker, that's something I totally recommend. I try and get out every single day. That definitely means something in Ireland, because rain or shine, you have to be prepared to go in the rain and just experience. So those are massive for me. Love an opportunity to sit down and read as well. So carving out some time to tackle a novel. Super into Japanese fiction and translation at the moment. There's some great novels being translated into English. So lots of reading, lots of walking, lots of coffee.
Any words of wisdom, or even any kind of, things that you're wondering about? Or
I don't know about words of wisdom, because I feel like I'm very much still, I always feel like I'm at the start of my journey. I know that I've sort of been in and out of a few different careers, but I still very much feel at the start of my journey. And I've been very fortunate, I think, to have a lot of leaders, managers, particularly women, who have gone ahead of me, and I always watch them work and think, gosh, I'd like to be like that one day. But I don't think I have any particular words of wisdom myself. I guess the only thing I can suggest to people is just really to make sure they're carving that time for themselves, because work is getting busy, work is getting complicated, particularly in the wellbeing practice. It can be hard. It can be a very hard sell, I think, at the moment. So we need to make sure that we're practicing in ourselves exactly what we're hoping for other people. So just don't neglect yourself.